Hello and welcome to Mr. Davis's classroom. This is Algebra 1, and today we're going to go over lesson 8.5. Today we're going to be going over factoring in the x squared plus bx plus c form. Here's your warm-up. Please attempt this before moving forward. Okay, when we're factoring, we're going to be factoring the special case. And what I mean by a special case is I mean the first term is just that x squared. It's not 2x squared or 3x squared or negative 9x squared. It's just x squared. So what we want to do is come up with a set of numbers to factor this out. And when we say factor, we're talking about a multiplication problem. So I want to change this problem into something that looks like things multiplied together, right? So that's a multiplication problem, right? Two parentheses together make a multiplication problem. So we're going to figure out how we're going to put those two together, right? Now, the way that we're going to do this is and we're going to do this two different ways to get us started. So, first way, all right, and they gave us a little hint here, and is in this chart right here, where they're talking about factors of 15, and then the sum of those factors, okay? The reason why we're using 15 is because of that C value, or that last number there, is 15. So, we have 15, we have 15, okay? All right. So we want to think of numbers that multiply to get 15. Well, the book has given us two examples. Right here we have 1 and 15. Well, here in this box here, they want us to find the sum of those factors. Well, 1 plus 15 is 16. All right. Well, now what we want to do is we want to check that 16, that sum of the factors, with our middle number. And we want to make sure that they're the same. So if we look at this, we see that 8 and 16 are not the same. So 1 and 15 is not my numbers that I'm looking for. The next set of numbers is 3 and 5. Well, the sum of 3 and 5, 3 plus 5 is 8. And 8 is the number I'm looking for over here. So that tells me that those two numbers there are the two numbers I'm looking for. Now what we need to do is rewrite this in factored form, right? We got all the pieces of information, okay? First thing is we're going to split that x squared into two parts, right? We're going to have x and x, right? Since we have x squared, we can split those apart into two x's. The next part is I'm going to take these two numbers and I'm going to plug them in the second half of each one. And since that's a 3, that's a positive 3, I'm going to put plus 3. And since that's a positive 5, I'm going to put plus 5. Okay? Now, one question that somebody's going to have is, does it matter which one goes first? No. This is the same exact correct answer. Only difference is the order has been switched. Same answer, you'll still get it right. Okay, so that was one way. And this is looking for factors and sums. The other way, clear my board. The other way is called x factoring. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to make a decent sized x right there. Then I'm going to bring down my two numbers. Okay, so my 8 from my middle term is going to go on top here. My 15 from my last term is going to go on bottom. So I have 8 and 15. Now what I want to do is I want to come up with two numbers, so one here and one here, two numbers that multiply to get 15 and add to get 8. Well, just like we have listed over here, we can just start thinking of two numbers that multiply to get 15, right? And it might take you a time or two to guess and check, right? But 1 and 15 didn't work, right? And then next, most people would guess 3 and 5. All right? And this is where I'm just going to do a little bit of double checking, right? So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 plus 5 is 8. Okay? So I got those correct numbers, and then filling them in is the same way as before. Once we know the numbers, we're going to split the x's, and then we have a positive 3 and a positive 5. Okay? And we do this when there's only an x squared, no numbers in front of it. Okay. Here's one for you to try. Now, on this case, they didn't use x, they used an r, but same exact thing applies. The only difference is we're going to be splitting apart a couple r's. I just need you guys to tell me what those second numbers are going to be. All right? All right, make sure you hit pause and try this one before moving forward. All right, now we have another one which looks pretty similar. Only difference is now we have a negative sign in there, right? So we're going to do one with a negative sign right there. All right. So again, let's do an x factor. So I'm going to make my decent size x. On top right here is this middle term, right? And I need to bring that minus sign down with it. So I'm going to have minus 11. On the bottom is going to be that right one, which is a 24, and that's a positive 24. Now this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky, because we need to think of two numbers that multiply to get a positive 24 and add to get a negative. Well, let's first off, and I'm going to do a little sidebar over here. Let's first off think about numbers that multiply to get a positive, okay? Well, obviously if I take like 2 times 3, I'm going to get 6. Or if I take a positive number times a positive number, I get a positive. But that's not going to work here because of positive numbers don't add to get a negative 11. Well, one thing that we should know by now, if we go a negative number times a negative number, that's an ugly 3, so negative 2 times a negative 3 is going to be also positive 6. So in this case, where we have a negative on top of my x factoring, then I should be thinking I have 2 negative numbers, okay? So let's be thinking about 2 negative numbers now. Okay, remember we're adding to get the negative 11, we're multiplying to get the 24. Well, let's start thinking about numbers that multiply to get 24. And we need 2 negative numbers, right? So negative 1 and negative 24. If I add those, I get negative 25. So that doesn't work. How about, so let's see, we tried negative 1 and negative 24, right? But we said the sum was negative 25, so that didn't work. Negative 2 and negative 12. Negative 2 times negative 12 is 24, but when I add them, I get negative 14. Quite a bit closer, but not quite. Let's see, I think 3 goes in there, so negative 3 and negative 8. Negative 3 times negative 8 is positive 24. Negative 3 plus 8 is negative 11. There we go. So there we go. We got negative 3, negative 8. Right, now I'm going to erase all my scratch work, which, as you get better at factoring, you will not need. Now, it's just time to break it apart. Again, my x's split apart, and then I have my 2 pieces. Now, since this is a negative 3, I'm going to bring that negative sign with it, and since it's a negative 8, I'm going to bring that negative sign with it, giving me x minus 3 times x minus 8. Now again, it doesn't matter which one goes first as long as you have both of them there. All right. Let's go ahead and try the top one, and then the bottom one. Part B, you need to think about if you can factor it, and then why or why not. Okay, so A is definitely factorable. B, you need to think about. Okay, problem 3 here. Same type of problem, right? Nothing in front of the x squared, but now we have a negative c value and a positive. There. So, again, let's just do it. It's the x factored form, right? I'm going to have a, let's say, a positive 2 and a negative 15. Now, in this case, I want my product to be a negative number, right? A negative 15. Well, to get multiplication to equal a negative, I need to have a positive number times a negative number. Okay? A positive number times a negative number, because a positive times a negative will equal a negative. The second thing we need to keep in mind is that once we get those two, the positive number needs to be 2 bigger than the negative. Okay? So let's see if we can figure those out, right? So 15 is kind of nice because it doesn't have a whole lot of factors, right? I could use like 15 and negative 1, but 15 is much bigger than just 2 bigger. Then the next set is 5 and negative 3. Okay, so 5, negative 3. All right. 5 times 3, negative 15. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. Okay? So, in this case, we get 1 positive and 1 negative, which we haven't had yet. So, again, split apart the x's. Just make sure you bring the right sign, right? We had a positive 5 and a negative 3. Just make sure you bring the right signs with those numbers when you split up the x. And this is how you do one with a negative c value. All right. Now here's 2 for you to try. Just a small note. This one has a positive middle number, and this one has a negative. So if you have a negative middle number, the negative factor is going to have to be the larger of the two. All right, here's your homework assignment. Please enjoy, and thanks for stopping by.